Ooh, wasabi guys, coming back at you with another video here. This is going to be the top 5 cards in Commander in Abzan colors. Now, the reason why this is only going to be a top 5 is because if you haven't already noticed, the card pool for Abzan is just incredibly small, and quite frankly, I don't feel like putting 5 cards on this list that are really just terrible cards and they're not that great in Commander. They just happen to be Abzan colored, so I quite frankly don't want to waste my breath just talking about cards that really aren't that good. And I know I've been stretching some of my top 10 lists, and especially when we get into 3 colors here, it's going to get a lot harder. And going into Abzan colors here, there's just not enough cards to choose from, so I feel that a top 5 list is more than fair. So let's start it off here with the number 5 selection here, which I have Anafenza the Foremost. Now, not a very great option as a commander, but believe it or not, a very good card in Commander, whether people want to realize it or not. Yeah, the first ability is rather dull, and it's most likely not going to matter. Being able to put a +1/+1 counter on another tapped creature is a huge weakness, because most of the time you would just rather just put the +1/+1 counter on Anafenza when you attack with her. The real reason why you want this card in Commander is for the ability to exile cards that would go into the graveyard. Very good hate, and I know a lot of Commander decks in this format just thrive around the graveyard-based strategy. I mean, we have Crucible of Worlds, Ramen Up Excavators, we have a whole bunch of cards that synergize well with our graveyards, and if you have a card here that can just disrupt all of that, destroy a lot of these Simic decks that are so based around the graveyard, like the Mimeoplasms and the Siddices. They're all over this format. We have a ton of graveyard-based decks. Whenever you have something that can do that, I mean, not even just those graveyard-based decks, but anything that synergizes at all with graveyards, it's going to be hindered because of Anafenza here, and definitely worthy of a number 5 spot here, but not fantastic as a commander option. I like her better as one of the 99. Number 4, I have Doran the Siege Tower. Very fun Treefolk tribal commander option here, and that's most likely going to be one of the 2 options you choose for him. The other is of course going to be just put a bunch of fatties out there and huge toughness, and there's a ton of creatures that are just defenders, but you don't want defender, you want creatures that don't have defender and just have a huge toughness, and most likely that's a trade-off that they've done in card design so often that they're going to give a creature a lot of toughness in exchange for power, which is most likely going to be very little or no power at all, and it's going to be very cheap in mana cost because not a lot of people typically play with these creatures that have a huge toughness, and they're not really going to have a place in Commander too often, with the exception of Doran the Siege Tower decks, and you have those 2 type of strategies for Doran. But just a very cool card, and the whole Treefolk thing in the Lorwyn block was just so cool, and just amazing cards, and it's so much fun whenever you can go out there with a tribal strategy, and Doran is definitely an out there commander, and Treefolk Tribal is an out there tribe that not a lot of people play, but a very unique one. It's not just based around combat tricks, it's based around just changing the board state. So whenever you can do that and just change the game at the same time, it's really cool. Number 3 is Abzan Charm. You can exile a creature with power 3 or greater, you can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or you can distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. Obviously, the best ability here is being able to exile a creature with power 3 or greater. That's a ton of creatures in this format, problem creatures. They tend to be pretty big. Not saying the other 2 abilities aren't also decent. I mean, the distributing 2 +1/+1 counters is not that big of a deal for 3 mana here. You want more than that. So drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life is definitely better. It's practically instant speed divination in these colors, so you are losing the 2 life. It's good card draw. I'm not going to go into depth about it, why card draw is good, but it's important for the format, so whenever you can do it at instant speed is always nice. The main reason why I have it at number 3 here is because of the ability to exile a target creature. Yes, we have swords and path are just the optimal choices for exiling creature removal, but whenever you have an option here that you can draw 2 cards or you can exile a creature with power 3 or greater, I really like how If there was one thing that I really liked about Khans of Tarkir, it was the fact that the charms, they were a step up here as opposed to the ones from the Shards block, where you had, Esper Charm, Bant Charm were the best, but compared to some of these charms from Khans, kind of inferior. I mean, these are really good. Number 2 is Gave, Guru of Spores. Now, out of a lot of combo decks in this format, he is one of the most well-known combo commanders. He synergizes with doubling season effects and, Ashnod's altars and anything that you can generate a bunch of mana, get more counters, get more tokens. Anything like that is definitely going to be good for this type of commander. He is pretty much what you think of when you think of doubling season in general, what you're going to synergize with. You get the tokens, synergies, you get the +1/+1 counter synergies, and in Abzan colors there are a ton of cards that synergize with that. You have Anointed Procession, which is a newer card from Amonkhet, which perfectly synergizes with this type of deck already, and there's just other cards as well, but there's just so many options. Whenever you have the ability to combo with your commander, it's always going to make for a powerful deck build. And I think Gave is definitely known for those types of competitive combo deck builds, and very fun, very cool, very flavorful, and I love all the different interactions that you can have with this type of commander. If I had to say there's anything bad about him, it would probably be the fact that he's so well known as a combo commander that it's rarely ever going to go smoothly for you if you try to play him and you're up against players that do know what he does, because so much of your deck is going to be devoted towards trying to combo that you're not going to have as much control, and if you have too much control, your deck isn't going to combo as efficiently, so you have that downside there. The number 1, I have Karador, Ghost Chieftain. Graveyard-based decks are typically just either Golgari or Dimir or Sultai or whatever. The fact that all the graveyard synergies with Abzan, it works so well because all 3 colors have some sort of interaction with the graveyard, and it works better than Sultai at times. And I mean, you don't have the control options that a lot of Sultai decks do have, but you have a ton of good creatures like Karmic Guides and Sun Titans and Revularks. You have a lot of cool options. You have Safi Eriksdotter. I mean, there's a lot of cool cards that you can put into this deck here, and very similar to Meren in the fact that you can get a creature back. You do have to hard cast it though. It has that downside that it's not as quick and efficient as Meren is, but you do have the ability to get him out for super cheap depending on how many creatures you have in your graveyard. So that is very interesting and very cool, and definitely one of the best cards, if not the best card in Abzan colors. Just the graveyard synergies in these colors are so cool, and you don't have this with a lot of other commanders. They tend to be in that Sultai range of colors, and just the fact that you're splashing white here, it's more or less, it feels at home. White feels at home in Abzan here for graveyard-based strategies because you have so many graveyard synergies with white. And just an overall, just a very well-rounded graveyard build and a very enjoyable commander option. So anyway guys, that's going to do it for me and this top 5 list of the best Abzan cards and commander. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share it with your friends and family. Void here, signing off. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.